With this ring, I thee wed.
with all my heart.
You may now kiss the bride.
Abandoned bride marries a security man unaware he's a billionaire CEO. Esteemed viewers, welcome to Luxurious True Life Stories. Please like and subscribe for more captivating luxury true stories. Let's get into the story. Anita Charles built her life on discipline and sacrifice. At 30, she was one of the most respected financial strategists in the city, known for rescuing collapsing companies and turning them into profit machines. Her office overlooked the skyline, a symbol of everything she had earned without shortcuts. Yet beneath the sharp suits and confident decisions was a woman deeply in love. Anthony Kelvin, her fiancé, was the center of her private world. While the public saw him as a rising entrepreneur, only Anita knew how much she had quietly invested in his success. She cleared his debts, funded his projects, and introduced him to powerful investors. She never complained. To her, love meant building together, even if she carried most of the weight. That morning, after approving another transfer to support Anthony's business, Anita stepped outside and paused to help a stranger pick up scattered papers from the pavement. Across the street, a security guard named Desmond Taylor noticed her kindness. He stood quietly, observing a man who seemed ordinary, yet whose calm, assessing gaze suggested there was far more to him than the uniform he wore. Desmond Taylor adjusted the sleeve of his security uniform as the morning crowd thickened. To everyone passing by, he was just another guard earning a modest wage, invisible to the fast-moving world of executives and investors. But beneath the simple fabric was a man who owned one of the largest private business empires in the country. Desmond had chosen this disguise carefully. Wealth had brought him influence, yet it had also surrounded him with people who admired his money more than his character. He wanted something real, especially love that was not negotiated through status. His decision unsettled his corporate board. That same morning, dozens of urgent messages waited on his private phone, most reminding him of meetings only a billionaire CEO could command. He ignored them. For once, he preferred the quiet clarity of watching people as they truly were. Some walked past without acknowledging him, others treated him with casual disrespect, confirming what he had long suspected, position often determined kindness. Then there was Anita, whose small act of helping a stranger lingered in his thoughts. She had not looked around for approval. She simply helped and moved on. As the day stretched forward, Desmond found himself studying the entrance of Anita's building more than necessary. Something about her composure felt rare, almost grounding. He did not know her story yet, but instinct told him she was different from the carefully polished socialites constantly introduced to him. For the first time since beginning his unusual experiment, curiosity replaced detachment. Without realizing it, the hidden titan had just noticed a woman who would soon change the direction of his carefully controlled life. The weeks leading to the wedding should have been filled with effortless joy, yet Anita began noticing small changes in Anthony. He was harder to reach, often blaming long meetings or sudden travel. When they spoke, his warmth felt rehearsed, like lines memorized rather than emotions felt. Anita dismissed the discomfort each time it surfaced, telling herself that stress often reshaped people temporarily. After all, they were preparing for a future together. Nervousness was normal. One afternoon, Anita surprised Anthony at his office with lunch, hoping to steal a rare quiet moment with him. His reaction was polite but strained, his smile arriving a second too late. While he stepped away to answer a call, his phone lit up on the desk beside her. A message preview appeared briefly, just a name she didn't recognize and a small heart emoji. Anita quickly looked away, refusing to betray his privacy, yet an unfamiliar heaviness settled in her chest. When he returned, he spoke rapidly about expansion plans she herself had financed, never noticing her silence. Outside the building, Desmond happened to be overseeing a temporary security inspection nearby. From a distance, he saw Anita exit with composed steps, though her expression carried a hint of quiet thoughtfulness rather than her usual certainty. He had learned to read people well. Success often trained the eye to detect what words hid. Something fragile had shifted, even if Anita had not yet allowed herself to name it. And sometimes, the first crack in a perfect picture appears long before the structure begins to fall. Wedding preparations grew grander by the day. Designers visited Anita's home with fabrics, planners discussed floral arches, and guest lists expanded to include influential names. Anthony spoke often about how important it was for the ceremony to reflect their status. Anita agreed without hesitation, though she quietly covered most of the rising costs. To her, the celebration was not about display, it was about honoring the life they were about to begin. One evening, Anthony arrived with urgent news. A major business opportunity had appeared, one that required immediate capital to secure investors' confidence. He spoke with persuasive urgency, describing it as the breakthrough that would guarantee their future comfort. Anita listened carefully, then opened her laptop without drama. Within minutes, she authorized one of the largest transfers she had ever made personally. Anthony embraced her quickly, relief obvious in his voice, yet his gratitude felt fleeting, as if his thoughts were already racing toward the deal rather than the sacrifice behind it. Later that night, Anita sat alone by her window, watching the city lights flicker like distant promises. A quiet tiredness touched her, but regret did not. Love, she believed, was proven through action. Across town, Desmond reviewed reports inside a modest security office, preparing to end his shift. Through a small television, a financial segment mentioned Anthony's sudden expansion, noting the mysterious funding behind it. Desmond recognized the pattern instantly. Fortunes rarely appeared without a silent architect. Though he did not yet know the full story, he found himself hoping that Anita, the woman who helped strangers without hesitation, was not giving more than she was receiving. While Anita finalized seating charts and menu tastings, Anthony spent more evenings away from home. His explanations remained smooth: investor dinners, strategy sessions, late negotiations, yet his attention drifted further each day. In elegant rooftop lounges and private clubs, he was often accompanied by Sonia, a striking woman whose confidence drew attention effortlessly. Sonia admired ambition and luxury, and Anthony, eager to be seen as powerful, enjoyed the version of himself reflected in her approval. Their conversations were filled with excitement rather than depth. Sonia encouraged bigger risks, flashier deals, and a lifestyle that looked impressive from the outside. Anthony rarely mentioned Anita. When he did, he framed the relationship as something steady but uninspiring, conveniently ignoring the foundation she had built beneath him. With Sonia, he felt unburdened by gratitude. What began as harmless meetings soon shifted into secrecy, then intimacy, until deception became part of his daily rhythm. Meanwhile, Anita moved through her days with calm focus, unaware that the future she was carefully protecting had already begun to tilt. One afternoon, as she left a bridal fitting, she noticed a couple laughing near the entrance of a nearby hotel. The man's voice sounded briefly familiar, but traffic noise swallowed the thought before it could form. She continued toward her car, choosing trust over suspicion. Not far away, Desmond observed the same hotel while conducting another routine check for a partner property. He saw Anthony step out moments later, though Anita was already gone. Desmond didn't know their connection yet, but a quiet unease settled within him, the kind that appears when truth moves just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Days flowed quickly as the wedding approached, and the city seemed wrapped in early summer brightness. Anita balanced board meetings with final wedding confirmations, moving with the steady confidence people relied upon. One afternoon, while leaving a cafe after a brief break, She noticed a delivery worker struggling to lift several heavy boxes that had split open on the pavement. Without hesitation, she set her phone aside and helped gather the scattered items, even offering to pay for the damaged goods despite the workers' protests. She smiled lightly, brushed dust from her sleeve, and continued on her way as if kindness required no recognition. Leaning against a nearby pillar, Desmond had witnessed the entire moment. His role had placed him in countless public spaces over the past months, and he had learned that genuine character revealed itself in ordinary situations, not staged generosity. Anita never searched for attention. She simply acted. It stirred something unfamiliar in him, respect first, then a quiet curiosity he could not easily dismiss. Many people had tried to impress him when he lived openly as a billionaire, yet very few had ever impressed him unknowingly. Later that evening, a light rain began to fall just as Anita exited her office without an umbrella. Before she could step into the street, a dark umbrella appeared above her. She turned to see Desmond, composed and courteous, explaining that the weather had shifted suddenly. She thanked him warmly, surprised by the thoughtful gesture from someone she had never met. Their exchange lasted less than a minute, but as Anita walked away beneath the soft rhythm of rain, both carried the faint awareness of having crossed paths at precisely the right time, though neither yet understood how significant that small encounter would soon become. Morning sunlight poured through the tall windows of the bridal suite, turning everything gold, the mirrors, the silk curtains, the carefully arranged flowers. Anita sat calmly as the final touches were added to her appearance, her gown flowing around her like quiet poetry. Friends moved around her with excitement, adjusting details and whispering about how radiant she looked. Anita felt a gentle nervousness, the kind that comes before a long-awaited promise is fulfilled. Today was not just a ceremony. It was the beginning of the life she had patiently built. Messages filled her phone, congratulations, blessings, eager confirmations from guests already arriving at the Grand Cathedral. Yet one message was missing. Anthony had not written that morning. Anita told herself he was likely overwhelmed with preparations on his side. She focused instead on steady breaths, remembering the years they had spent planning this future. Outside, luxury cars lined the entrance while photographers prepared to capture every moment. It was the kind of wedding people would talk about for years. Near the cathedral doors stood Desmond in his security uniform, assigned to assist with guest coordination. He watched quietly as families greeted one another and music drifted softly into the open air. When Anita stepped out of her car, the atmosphere seemed to pause. She carried herself with graceful certainty, unaware that the perfect picture surrounding her was far more fragile than it appeared. Somewhere beyond the gathering excitement, an unseen truth was already moving toward her, silent, swift, and powerful enough to change everything before she reached the altar. The cathedral doors opened, and music swelled gently through the grand hall. Guests turned in admiration as Anita walked down the aisle, her step slow and steady, bouquet trembling slightly in her hands. At the altar, however, there was an empty space where Anthony should have stood. A quiet murmur rippled across the crowd, though most assumed it was a minor delay. Anita's heartbeat quickened, but she forced a calm expression, certain he would appear at any moment. Her phone vibrated inside her clutch. At first, she ignored it, unwilling to break the ceremony's flow. When the vibration continued, she stepped slightly aside, whispering a polite apology. The message displayed Anthony's name. Relief flickered across her face, until she opened it. The words were cold, direct, and merciless. He wrote that he had never loved her, that he had stayed only for stability. Attached beneath the message was a photograph, Anthony and Sonia locked in a kiss, smiling with careless intimacy. The world seemed to tilt. Sound faded into distant echoes as humiliation pressed against her chest. She imagined the whispers that would follow if she revealed the truth to the waiting congregation. Pride battled heartbreak in silence. Without a word, Anita turned and walked briskly down the aisle, past confused guests, past flashing cameras, past every expectation she had ever held. Outside the cathedral doors, the air felt sharp against her skin. She moved quickly to the side of the building, away from watchful eyes, and finally allowed the tears to fall, not loud, but heavy, like something inside her had collapsed beyond repair. Anita leaned against the cool stone wall beside the cathedral, her breathing uneven as she tried to steady herself. The message replayed endlessly in her mind, each word sharper than the last. Only minutes ago, she had been walking toward a future she believed was certain. Now that future had vanished without warning. She pressed her bouquet tightly, petals falling unnoticed onto the ground. More than heartbreak, it was the public humiliation she feared, hundreds of guests waiting inside, expecting vows that would never be spoken. Desmond noticed her absence almost immediately. Years of observing people had trained him to recognize distress even when hidden. Spotting her alone, shoulders trembling despite her effort to remain composed, he approached slowly so as not to startle her. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. The simple kindness in his voice broke the fragile control she had been holding. Words spilled out before she could stop them. How she had supported Anthony from nothing, how she believed loyalty would be returned, how everything had ended with a single message. Desmond listened without interruption, his expression calm yet deeply attentive. He felt a quiet anger toward the unseen man capable of such cruelty, but he kept his tone steady. Anita wiped her tears, embarrassed by her vulnerability in front of a stranger. Then panic surfaced again as she glanced toward the cathedral doors. "They're all waiting," she whispered. "If I walk back in alone, I don't know if I can bear their eyes." For a brief moment, silence hung between them, heavy with the weight of an impossible situation, until a desperate thought began forming in Anita's mind, daring enough to change both their lives. Anita's mind raced as the cathedral doors loomed only steps away. Inside, music still played softly, guests unaware that the groom had vanished from her life entirely. She turned to Desmond, eyes still glassed with tears but now carrying a sudden, determined spark. "I need your help," she said, her voice trembling yet urgent. He looked at her carefully, sensing that whatever she was about to ask would not be small. She explained quickly, if she walked back inside alone, the humiliation would follow her for years. The headlines, the whispers, the pity. She had built her name on strength. She could not let her wedding day become a spectacle of abandonment. Then the words came, almost breathless. "Will you stand in for him? Just long enough to finish the ceremony." Desmond blinked in disbelief. They had only just met. The request was extraordinary, reckless even. Yet beneath her desperation, he saw dignity, a woman trying to protect her self-respect, not her pride. For a moment, he hesitated. He had disguised himself to discover whether anyone could value him without wealth. Now fate was placing him in a situation he could never have planned. Anita had shown him kindness before knowing anything about him. She had spoken to him with honesty, not status. Slowly, he nodded. "If you are certain," he replied calmly. Anita exhaled shakily, gratitude and shock mixing in her expression. Together, they turned toward the cathedral doors, two strangers about to step into vows neither had foreseen, bound by circumstance yet guided by something unexpectedly sincere. When the cathedral doors opened again, conversation softened into puzzled silence. Guests straightened in their seats, expecting to see Anthony at last. Instead, Anita entered beside a man no one recognized, a security guard still dressed in uniform, his posture calm despite the sea of questioning eyes. Confusion spread quickly, yet Anita walked forward without hesitation, her chin lifted with quiet resolve. Whatever storm had passed through her moments earlier was now hidden behind remarkable composure. The efficient faltered briefly but resumed once Anita gave a small, steady nod. Desmond stood beside her, listening carefully as the ceremony continued. Though unplanned, the moment carried an unusual sincerity. When it came time for vows, Anita spoke first. She did not promise perfection. She promised honesty, resilience, and the courage to begin again even when life shifted without warning. Her voice grew stronger with each word, surprising even herself. Desmond followed with simple vows: respect, protection, and partnership, choosing each word thoughtfully rather than decorating them with excess emotion. A quiet stillness filled the cathedral as rings were exchanged. What began as shock slowly transformed into reluctant admiration. There was something undeniably powerful about a bride who refused to be defined by betrayal. When they were finally pronounced married, a gentle applause rose, hesitant at first, then warmer, as if the guests sensed they had witnessed not scandal but an unexpected act of bravery. As Anita and Desmond walked back down the aisle together, neither spoke, yet both felt the undeniable weight of what had just happened. In the span of minutes, two separate lives had been redirected toward a shared and entirely unpredictable future. The moment Anita and Desmond stepped outside as husband and wife, the calm of the cathedral dissolved into a storm of whispers. Guests gathered in tight circles, speculating rapidly. Phones lit up as messages traveled faster than the newlyweds themselves. Within hours, photos of the ceremony began circulating online, headlines questioning how a powerful businesswoman ended up marrying a security guard at her own wedding. Anita had expected judgment, but she hadn't anticipated how quickly the world would form its own narrative. Instead of retreating, Anita chose composure. At the reception hall, originally prepared for her and Anthony, she walked in beside Desmond without apology. Conversations paused as they entered. Some eyes carried pity, others curiosity. Anita thanked guests for attending, her tone steady and dignified. Desmond remained calm at her side, neither defensive nor uncomfortable. He understood scrutiny. He had faced it for different reasons throughout his life. What surprised him was Anita's refusal to appear ashamed. She treated him not as a replacement, but as her husband. Later that evening, when the celebration thinned and the noise softened, Anita and Desmond found themselves alone in a quiet corridor. The intensity of the day finally caught up to them. "You don't owe me anything beyond today," Anita said gently, acknowledging the unusual circumstances. Desmond met her gaze thoughtfully. "I made a choice," he replied, "and I don't regret it." The words lingered between them, not dramatic, but sincere. Outside, the city lights shimmered as usual, unaware that what seemed like madness to the world might quietly become the beginning of something far more meaningful. The morning after the wedding arrived with an unfamiliar stillness. Anita woke expecting to feel regret or panic, yet what settled over her was something quieter: relief. The worst had already happened, and she had survived it. Across the apartment living room, Desmond stood near the window, already dressed, studying the awakening city with thoughtful calm. They moved around each other politely at first, like respectful roommates rather than newlyweds, both aware that their union had begun under extraordinary circumstances. Over breakfast, conversation came slowly but naturally. Anita spoke about practical matters, living arrangements, privacy, and the need to move forward without letting public opinion define them. Desmond listened carefully, answering with measured honesty. He told her he valued simplicity and disliked unnecessary display, which explained why he seemed perfectly comfortable in an ordinary environment. Anita found his steadiness grounding. There was no performance in him, no restless need to impress. For the first time in weeks, she felt no pressure to prove anything. As the days passed, small observations replaced awkwardness. Desmond possessed a sharp understanding of business discussions when news played on television, offering insights that surprised Anita. He noticed details others overlooked and carried himself with quiet confidence that didn't match the limitations of his uniform. Anita, in turn, showed resilience, returning to work without dramatizing her heartbreak, earning even greater respect from colleagues. One evening, after sharing an unexpectedly easy laugh, they both recognized the subtle shift. What began as a marriage of necessity was slowly forming its own foundation. Trust was not declared. It was growing quietly, strengthened by consistency neither had planned but both had begun to value. Days turned into weeks, and rhythm replaced uncertainty. Anita returned fully to her demanding schedule, while Desmond continued appearing to live the modest life she believed was his. Yet behind his calm expression, a silent conflict grew. Each time Anita spoke openly with him about her past disappointments, her determination to trust again, and her cautious hope for their future, the truth he carried felt heavier. He had built entire industries with fearless decisions, but hiding his identity from the woman who now shared his name proved far more difficult. One evening, a sudden power outage darkened their building, drawing them onto the rooftop along with other residents seeking fresh air. The city glowed below like scattered constellations, and the quiet created space for honesty. Anita admitted that betrayal had taught her how fragile certainty could be. "What I want now is something real," she said softly. "No illusions, no hidden intentions." Desmond listened, the words striking deeper than she realized. For a brief moment, he considered telling her everything: the empire, the boardrooms, the life waiting just beyond her awareness, but he stopped himself. He wanted her trust to grow naturally, untouched by the influence of wealth. As they stood side by side beneath the open sky, Anita thanked him unexpectedly. Not for the wedding rescue, but for his presence since then, steady, respectful, never demanding. Desmond felt an unfamiliar warmth at her gratitude. He had encountered admiration countless times, yet sincerity like hers remained rare. Still, the secret lingered between them, unseen but powerful. He knew the longer he waited, the greater her shock would be. And yet, watching her laugh lightly as the city lights flickered back to life, he understood why he hesitated. For the first time, someone valued him simply as a man, not the billionaire the world recognized. A few afternoons later, Anita invited Desmond to join her at a small networking luncheon hosted by one of her professional circles. She wanted him included in her world rather than hidden from it. The venue was elegant but understated, filled with polished conversations and quiet ambition. As they entered, several guests greeted Anita warmly, yet their smiles shifted into subtle surprise when they noticed Desmond's simple attire. Anita introduced him without hesitation, her tone carrying natural pride. During the luncheon, a senior executive, known for measuring people by visible success, asked Desmond what he did. When Desmond calmly replied that he worked in security, the table fell into an awkward pause. The executive offered a thin smile and made a dismissive remark about unexpected pairings, drawing a few restrained laughs. Anita's expression cooled instantly. Without raising her voice, she spoke with composed firmness about dignity, reminding the table that character outweighed titles. Her defense was neither emotional nor dramatic, just clear, unwavering respect for her husband. Desmond observed her quietly, more moved than he allowed himself to show. Many had treated him well when they knew his status. Very few had defended him when they believed he had none. Anita continued the luncheon as if nothing had happened, refusing to let discomfort control the afternoon. When they stepped outside afterward, sunlight warming the pavement, Desmond thanked her. She seemed puzzled by his gratitude. "Marriage means standing beside each other," she replied simply. In that moment, Desmond realized something profound. She had chosen him publicly without knowing what he possessed. The decision strengthened his certainty that when the truth finally surfaced, it would not be wealth that defined their bond, but loyalty already proven. Not long after the luncheon, Anita encountered an unexpected challenge at work. A critical partnership her firm depended on was suddenly delayed, wrapped in vague explanations that made little business sense. Competitors began circling quickly, sensing vulnerability. Anita responded with her usual precision, arranging meetings and drafting alternative strategies, yet she could feel resistance forming somewhere beyond her reach, as if unseen hands were attempting to slow her progress. Desmond noticed the subtle tension in her evenings, the longer pauses before she spoke, the thoughtful silence during dinner. He never pressed her for details, but he paid attention. Without drawing attention to himself, he made a single late-night call from a private line rarely used during his time in disguise. By morning, conversations had shifted inside executive circles. Agreements that seemed uncertain regained momentum, and the pressure surrounding Anita's firm eased almost overnight. No announcement explained the change. Influence often worked best when invisible. When Anita shared the sudden good news, relief brightened her face. "Sometimes things resolve in ways you don't expect," she said, almost to herself. Desmond simply nodded, hiding a small smile. Protecting her without claiming credit felt natural, not strategic. Watching her regain confidence mattered more than recognition ever could. As they walked together that evening beneath the soft glow of streetlights, Anita slipped her hand into his with growing ease, a gesture that spoke of trust forming steadily. Desmond understood then that some acts of care were strongest when left unnamed, quietly shaping a future she still believed was built only by the two of them. One calm morning, Desmond asked Anita to keep her schedule clear for the afternoon. His tone carried a gentle seriousness she had learned not to question. A sleek car arrived precisely at noon, far more luxurious than anything he had ever used before. Anita assumed it belonged to someone he knew through security work, yet the driver greeted Desmond with unmistakable respect. Curiosity stirred, but she chose patience as the city blurred past the tinted windows. The car stopped before a towering glass headquarters that seemed to touch the clouds. Anita recognized the building instantly. It housed one of the most influential corporate empires in the country, a place where decisions shaped entire markets. Before she could ask why they were there, the entrance doors opened and executives lined the lobby, their posture attentive. Then it happened. They addressed Desmond as Mr. Taylor. The name echoed softly through the vast space while realization began unfolding inside her. Desmond turned to her, his expression calm yet sincere. He explained everything: the disguise, his search for authenticity, the life he had stepped away from temporarily. He had never expected to meet someone like her, someone who chose dignity over status and loyalty over appearance. Silence held her for a long moment as the truth settled. The man she had defended, trusted, and grown close to was not merely a security guard. He was the force behind the empire rising around them. Shock shimmered in her eyes, but beneath it was something steadier, the understanding that the man beside her had been genuine all along, regardless of the title he carried. For several seconds, Anita could not speak. She looked around the grand lobby again, the marble floors, the quiet efficiency, the executives still standing with respectful distance, then back at Desmond. Her mind replayed every shared moment, the umbrella in the rain, the quiet breakfasts, the way he listened more than he spoke. None of it had been an act. Emotion rose unexpectedly, and tears gathered before she could stop them. "You trusted me with your worst day," Desmond said gently. "I wanted to be certain that what we built afterward was real." There was no arrogance in his voice, only sincerity. Anita let out a shaky breath, a small laugh escaping through her tears. "I married a man for his heart," she replied softly. "Finding out he has an empire too is overwhelming." Relief replaced shock as she realized something profound. She had chosen him without knowing his wealth, and that made the choice undeniably her own. Desmond guided her toward the panoramic windows overlooking the city. "Everything here is part of my world," he said, "but it means little without someone to share it with." Anita slipped her hand into his, no hesitation left now. The betrayal that once threatened to define her life felt distant, replaced by a future brighter than she had imagined. Looking out across the skyline, she understood with quiet certainty that the most important decision she had ever made was not walking toward Anthony at the altar. It was turning back and choosing courage when her world fell apart. And in doing so, she had unknowingly walked straight into the life meant for her. News travels quickly in influential circles, but truth travels even faster when supported by reality. Within days, the business world learned that Anita Charles was not only thriving after her abandoned wedding, she was now connected to Desmond Taylor, the formidable CEO many had only encountered across negotiation tables. The narrative shifted overnight. What some once mocked became a story of resilience and unexpected fortune. Anthony Kelvin, meanwhile, faced the consequences of choices built on illusion. The expansion he once celebrated began to crumble as investors withdrew confidence. Without Anita's steady guidance, the structure he had rushed to build revealed its weaknesses. Sonia, drawn originally to the image of effortless success, found little comfort in uncertainty. Their partnership, founded on excitement rather than loyalty, grew strained under pressure. Doors that once opened eagerly now remained closed, and Anthony slowly understood the cost of abandoning the person who had been his strongest foundation. Anita heard fragments of these developments, but felt no desire for revenge. Standing beside Desmond had changed her perspective. Peace proved far more valuable than bitterness. One evening, as she reviewed new opportunities within Desmond's headquarters, she realized her story was no longer about what she had lost, it was about what she had gained through courage. Outside the tall windows, the city lights shimmered steadily, indifferent to past deception. Life, as it often does, had quietly restored balance without needing her to fight for it. The months that followed felt less dramatic and more intentional. Anita did not step into Desmond's empire as a trophy or silent partner. She entered as herself, strategic, disciplined, and visionary. Together, they began shaping projects that blended his global reach with her precision in rebuilding struggling enterprises. Boardrooms that once intimidated others now felt like spaces of collaboration. For Anita, it was not the scale of power that mattered, but the partnership behind it. At home, their relationship deepened in quieter ways. Evenings were no longer defined by crisis but by conversation, shared meals, thoughtful debates, laughter that came easily. Desmond admired Anita's resilience. Anita admired his humility despite immense influence. Their marriage had begun unexpectedly, yet it matured deliberately. Trust was no longer fragile. It had been tested by secrecy, public judgment, and revelation, and had emerged stronger. One evening, they returned to the cathedral where everything had changed. This time there were no guests, no cameras, no whispers. Just two people standing where courage had rewritten fate. Anita looked at Desmond and smiled gently. "The day I thought I lost everything," she said, "was the day I found my future." Desmond took her hand, not as a billionaire proving status, but as a man grateful for authenticity. The past no longer held weight over them. Ahead lay growth, partnership, and love chosen freely, not for security, not for image, but for truth. And in that truth, they began again. As this story comes to an end, remember that behind every luxury lies a truth few ever see. If this story moved you, support the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Until the next unforgettable true story, stay inspired and stay curious.